Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Roche, and I'm an alcoholic. A lot of your speakers don't have a watch, I see. I don't know how many of you know this, but the last conference in New York made a real strong recommendation that the speakers should speak as long as it took them to drive to the meeting. So on the 2-hour drive up here from Oceanside, I'll be alone when I finish, huh? But actually, I came up today, early today, because of this handsome young man down here, Frank, whom I have the opportunity to sponsor. We had to go to downtown to some courtroom today. Some narrow bigots down there wanted Frank to prove why he ought to have a real estate license. Just because of a few minor felonies in his past. He made methamphetamines. He was the original good humor man. I really thought that was in Congress, you know. I would think that would be a requirement to be a real estate agent. Have felonies on your record. A lot of real estate agents here tonight. But it was nice to sit in the back of a courtroom and watch somebody else squirm. When the people getting their cakes were talking, a lot of memories were going through my head, and talking about wives and children and that kind of thing. And when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous this time, I was like Ed. I was just bankrupt in every area of my life. At the time, it didn't seem like any of it was my fault. That I had just gotten mixed up with a crazy bunch of people, and it was just too bad that a swell guy like me had to be in all this trouble. Now, I'm a functioning alcoholic. The experts, whoever the hell they are, you know, I think they all live in Fresno. The experts say that 95 to 97% of us that die of alcoholism are working, functioning alcoholics. That only maybe 3 to 5% of us die on Skid Row. And, you know, the kind of people that get up and go to work every day and do the job like I did until our wife kills us, or we get in a car wreck, or somebody with good sense shoots us, or something like that. Matter of fact, alcoholism is the only disease I know that kills a lot of people that don't have it. I certainly would have liked to help her along. But I was not living with my family when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous this time. I had been saying for years, if I could just unload that witch and clean that one up for you, and these long-haired dope fiend children that I had, we had this dual disease, alcoholism and Catholicism, and you know, when we were young, we had a kid every 9 months and 20 minutes, it seemed like to me. Every time I came out of a blackout. You know, they're all right when they're little, like kittens, you know, but they grow. And in the late 60s, you remember the 60s? I don't. I love to watch those old cable shows. I know I was there. I have the knots in my head here to prove it, I'll tell you. It's really fun to watch it, because I know I was there. But much of my life is hearsay, isn't yours? I spent most of my life saying, I did? Oh, I'm sorry about that, you know. Then I married her and became hearsay, you know. But those kids had grown, and 3 of them were in high school in the late 60s. And my oldest son, he's working his way through high school as a hashish salesman. And never had to give him any spending money, I'll tell you. I used to hit him up for a fifth about once a week. He'd say, yeah, what do you need, Dad? He had hair down to his butt, you know, and his head went like this all the time. His headband was way too tight, you know. Called his mother, man. Hey, man, what's for dinner? Oh, he was a thing of beauty, that one, I'll tell you. He took LSD like popcorn. He loved LSD, you know. And they see things, those guys. A few eyes around here look familiar. Anyway, I'd be right in the middle of a sentence. He'd say, what was that? Of course, the shape I was in, I'd say, I don't know. What? What was it? Where? What? I had this drunken mother-in-law live with us. I'd invited her. And she'd be leaning on her walker there, and she'd say, I'll explain it to you. She'd tell us what we'd seen. We were really glad to know. Old Grandma had broken her hip. You know? She didn't know how, we didn't know how. She said, it's funny, it didn't hurt. And my daughters in high school, they got boyfriends, look exactly like my son, you know. Oh, you put the 3 of them on the couch together. You should have watched it. And, you know, any dope fiend kid that ran away would come to our house. They fit right in there, you know what I mean? And it was just a zoo. It was a madhouse. Everybody in that house was crazy. I was the head nut. But boy, she was in the terminal stages of pre-Al-Anonism. She had one of those, the pre-Al-Anon tics. Did you ever have one? Couldn't let her go downtown in Oceanside. They're a marine town. You get in a lot of trouble doing that downtown. And she had lost her sense of humor many years before. And she and I had a kind of cordial hatred going. And kids didn't care for me much at all. And they weren't too nuts about her because she wouldn't do anything about me. And they didn't like each other very much either. There were 5 of them. The 2 little ones, they just walked in the wall and went to bed. They didn't know what the hell was going on. But it was just a zoo. It was just a nut house. You know, I'd said for years, if I could just unload this witch and these dope fiend children, I could drink like a gentleman again. And I knew it, and I knew that that was true. Every time I think of our house, I remember Jack Parr said one time, it's like they tipped the world and everything loose rolled to Southern California. I was in Nebraska a month or so ago, and a lot of them hung on the trees there, I'll tell you. They had several that I'd like to sponsor very much. What a nice earring. But I just knew that if I could unload that woman and those children, I'd be okay. And as I said, though, I was a doer and a goer and a functioning alcoholic. One guy said a functioning alcoholic is one whose wife works. Kind of like that. But I always did the job. I was a school teacher. I was talking to, was it Joanne before the meeting? We were talking about being a school teacher. She just retired in May. I retired almost, over 2 years ago now. And I was a very, if it's not a contradiction, a successful school teacher. Always got high marks, always got the highest rating. I remember when I told my principal that I was an alcoholic, I really thought the guy was going to fall off his chair. He just went, he said, I thought you were crazy. I said, I did too. But, I always showed up. I don't care how sick I was. I'm the kind of person, I get up in the morning and I puke for a while. I was sober maybe, 4 years, I think, and we'd just come back from the Southern California convention on this high, and we went to a Mexican restaurant and got some bad food, I guess, that night, and I was sober, I know, over 4 years, and I woke up in the middle of the night just sick, and I was throwing up and throwing up and throwing up. And about 4 in the morning, and I was down to the green stuff, remember? Calling Ralph, and that was one of the greatest spiritual awakenings I ever had in my whole life. I realized, looking down into that commode, that was the first time I had puked in 4 years. And I also figured out, I don't like to puke. But I thought everybody did, didn't you? I thought everybody spent a third of their life barfing. It's the price you pay if you like to drink. That's the way it goes, And my old man told me, if you eat breakfast and go to work, you're not an alcoholic. Yeah. He never said a word about puking breakfast back up again. So I would, and I would go in there. I don't care how sick I was, I would do the job. I would function. I was a high school teacher, some college, but primarily high school, taught all the different subjects, English, speech, drama, that kind of thing. When I was, 4 or 5 years before I got to the program this time, the principal had called me in one day. He did a lot of that. But he had gotten a flyer in the mail about a debate and a speech tournament, which I never heard of. Debate and speech, that was not my expertise. But he had gotten this flyer in the mail from San Diego State College, which is just 30 miles down the road, and they were having this debate and speech tournament. And he said, hey, I think your students would be good for them. So I found 4 or 5 kids that were willing to try. And we went down to this speech tournament at San Diego State. And we were amazed that there were like 50 schools maybe, 500 contestants. People took it seriously. All the boys had 3-piece suits on with vests, for God's sake. We're in Levi's. We know what the hell we were doing. And they butchered us. We did not win 1 round of debate. I mean, they ground us into the dark. Yeah. Now, I don't know what kind of a drunk you are, but I don't like to lose. It pisses me off to lose. And I'm pretty steamed anyway. And I went in the coach's room, a room about this size, maybe 25 of them in there, and they're all old pals, all old buddies, been doing this for years, and they snubbed me, it seemed to me. And so I hung around all day. You know how we are. That way they could snub me more. One guy really bothered me. He had a lot of gray hair. That bothered me right away. And about 2 in the afternoon, this jerk turns to me, and he was kind of like the guru of the coaches. Besides, it took 9 barbers to get this hair right. He had about a $1,000 suit on. The other coaches did this when they went in front of him. And about 2 in the afternoon, he turns to me and says, where are you from? God, I was grateful to be spoken to. I said, Oceanside. He said, oh, where's that? 30 miles up the road. Where's that? See, now I don't know what kind of a drunk you are, but I went back to Oceanside High School and I built a speech team. I built a hell of a speech team. I built a juggernaut speech team is what I built. Now, you don't do that easy, especially at a ghetto school like that. You have to work till 9:30, 10 o'clock every night. And you have to be in their faces, baby. You gotta scream and yell and coach. This guy next door says, I love to watch them leaving your room, wiping the spit off their glasses. And if you don't eat all day, You can keep that up. If you drink, 400 cups of coffee and you stay pissed off all day, you can do it. You can build a team. You can show that gray-haired sucker down there in San Diego, because I thought about him every day. And I could do that. I don't know what kind of drunk you are, because in the glove compartments waiting for me is a half a pint of hot vodka. I can't think of hot vodka today without getting goosebumps. Is there anything better than hot vodka? Oh, it just does the job, huh? It would lie there in the glove compartment and say, "Go get him, Cliff, baby. I'm waiting, darling." I'd finish with that last kid in the evening, and I'd just lurch out to that car. I smoked big cigars in those days, and I'd light a cigar, and I'd just fumble open that half a pint in the darkness of that old 58 Chevy station wagon I drove, my surfing car. That car ought to be in the archives, drunk's car, But anyway, I'd light that cigar, and I'd just take half of that half a pint of that hot vodka, just go, da, 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 oh, the nerves would be hanging out the ends of my fingers that far, just go, my brain was too big for my head, and it would subside, huh? And all the muscles in my body would relax, and I'd suck on that cigar. I'd say, "Damn, you're a good coach." I'd finish that vodka and sit in the darkness in the car, and I don't know what you're like, but after I drank all my life, from the first time I ever drank in my life, after I drank about 40 minutes, I would have about 8 minutes where everything was all right. No matter what happened to me that day, no matter what went on in my life, I was guaranteed in a 24-hour period 8 minutes of peace. And I don't tell earth people this. I only say this in AA meeting because you're the only ones in the world who would have any idea what I'm talking about. I mean, because lots of bad things happened to me all my life drinking. I went to jail lots of times. I was beaten to a pulp countless times. I wrecked, 40 cars. Some nights I did all 3 of those. All of the above. Wrecked the car, got beaten to a pulp, and went to jail. Lots of times. And in the morning I'd say, "Did we have fun?" So, the people, normal people, earth people would say, "You were beaten up, you went to jail, you wrecked for 8 minutes a day." And you can't tell them because they don't know. See, they never needed the 8 minutes. Those people lived most of their life in the 8 minutes. And so I only talk about it to you. And I had been to AA, several times. And you didn't seem to be the kind of person I am. You seem to be people, it always sounded to me like everybody's name in AA was Clem. And he was out of bib overalls about an hour and a half, His wife's name was Martha. What I heard them say all the time, I heard them say that Clem and Martha had been good, decent, happy, sincere, worthwhile folks their whole life, okay? But see, they had drunk too much. And the drinking after a time interfered with their lives so much that they had to come here to AA and get sober and be rehabilitated. See? That word I fastened on, rehabilitated. Because the first time I went to AA in '65, my hero was Eldridge Cleaver. He was a black militant terrorist, see what I mean? And he had given this speech about prison system in California, about how they're always trying to rehabilitate him. What he said was, they'd never known he had never been rehabilitated. You can't rehabilitate somebody who's never been rehabilitated. Because I have always been nuts. Showed Frank a historical spot this morning. When I was 4 years old, we lived on the Speedway in Venice. He thought the Speedway was a big wide street. And when I was 4 years old, I used to stand by the Speedway there and wait for cars. And when a car would come, I'd go, and I'd, like a little soldier, I'd wait for another one. Didn't know how to do this yet. You know? See, that's how I felt when I was 4 years old. And it never changed. I lived in fear, and I lived in anger, and I carried up this black ball in my gut my whole life. And on a good day, the black ball was about the size of a softball. And on a bad day, it was about the size of a basketball. But whatever size it was, it ran my life. Every action I ever took, every thought I ever had, every reaction I ever made was a direct result and was energized by that black ball down the middle of my gut. And the only time I was all right is when I drank about 40 minutes, I would disengage whatever lobe of the brain's connected to the black ball. And for 8 minutes, everything was okay. For 8 minutes, everything in my life was fine. And they wanted me to give up the 8 minutes to hang around with Clem and Martha. And besides, the IQ level in AA was much too low for me, because probably like many of you, I'm quite brilliant. I have degrees, you know, many degrees. I have degrees on my degrees. I told my sponsor about that new, and he says, so does the thermometer. You know where they stick that sometimes. But I would go to these little meetings, you know, around the table with the bare light bulb, and they had the collective IQ of an orange, it seemed to me, and just boobs. And I would whine and snivel when I would come around. And then after about 10 minutes, somebody would say, hey, you're whining and sniveling, you know. Well, they didn't know I was sensitive, too. And so they would hurt my feelings, and so I would punish that meeting. I would not go back there again. Just a loser, just a nickel-plated loser. Whenever I was around, I was obnoxious and over-intelligent and that sort of thing. I was a loser. And so, you know, when I walked out of that speaker meeting there, got rid of Clem and Martha, you know, and I'd gone on with my life, and they told me, they used to read chapter 3 all the time in those days, you know, and they would say, if you go back out there, Cliff, it's going to get worse, and I would go out there and it would get worse. And they said, if you would stay here, Cliff, it'll get better. And I never did that. I never found that out. For 5 years, I was in and out. But I built that speech team. And after a couple of years, we won one of those speech tournaments. But I didn't say anything to the gray-haired guy. It wasn't time yet. We know when it's time, don't we? The next year there were like, maybe 14 tournaments, 30, 40 schools in each tournament. My team took first place in all 14. But I can wait. I think revenge is better than Christmas. The next year there was a tournament. There were 25 schools competing in the tournament. My team scored more sweepstakes points than the other 24 schools combined. Then I went up to the gray-haired guy, and I put my nose right against his, and I said, do you know where Oceanside is now? And he just looked blank. He said, what are you talking about? I said, don't you remember about 4 or 5 years ago, you said to me, Oceanside, where's that? And he said, we just moved here from Nebraska. I didn't know where it was. It's a story of my life right there. You know? This guy's in his bed, you know, down in San Diego for 4 or 5 years every night. I'm up in Oceanside. I'll get you, you dirty. He's just going through life having a good time, and I'm dying. It was right after that that my wife and I had that main event. The neighbors have come to miss so much. And And I'm living down at the beach with my surfboard, and life's slipping away. I'm drunk all the goddamn time. I'm missing work, which I'd never done. And I went by the house one afternoon, and I was haranguing my wife about money. And the hashy salesman was kind of bobbing in the background there, singing a song from Pluto, the planet Pluto. And as I looked back on it, I did something really stupid. I turned to him and I said, "Dave, what's it like not to have your old man around the house?" And he looked me right out in the eye and he said, "It's beautiful." And that was my bottom. I didn't know it for maybe 2 hours, but that 16-year-old kid was glad that I was not there. And I went back to that dump on the beach and whined and sniveled a while, but I did not drink. And I went out and sat on the screen porch and I watched what is still to me the most beautiful sunset that I've ever seen. And it was one of those magenta ones where the water and the sky and the wet sand are all the same color. And about the time that the sun was setting down into the water, I was given the gift of seeing myself. That moment of clarity that all of us have. The new guy, I hope you have it. I saw me. I don't know what you were like when you drank, but I never liked myself when I was 4 years old. I never liked myself my whole life, but I had, maybe 3 things about myself all my life that I had respected. And it came to me as I watched the sunset that evening that I had turned in those 3 things about myself for the privilege of drinking booze. And the only thing that was left on that chaise lounge was that animal that I had become. And I went in the bedroom and I had an old sea bag where I kept stuff that I didn't use. And I dug out the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, which I had read in one of my travels through the AA. Being an English teacher, I thought it was very poorly written. Poor syntax, I think I said. Oh, it read real well this time. And if you're new, I read it cover to cover. I read all the stories. And in the second edition, there was a story called The Professor and the Paradox. And he rang my bell. He was another egotistical school teacher. And on the 3rd time through the book, on the 13th of January, 1970, it was 3 o'clock in the morning. And I was on page 63 again. And on page 63, there's a little prayer, which is step 3. The formal terms of surrender. The formal terms of surrender. And it seemed to me that it would be a good idea if I would kneel down on that filthy linoleum floor on that dump on the beach, and if I would just read that prayer out loud to myself. And that's what I did. I read, "God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and to do with me as you will. Relieve me of the bondage of self." And I had a spiritual experience at that moment. And that morning I knew I was going to be all right. And I have been all right since the 13th of January 1970 at 3 o'clock in the morning. Because the power that's in this room came into my life, and it's been a part of my life ever since. And that power has hung on to me even when I tried to let go. Now I find that power usually in you. The only place I have myself personally that I have ever seen God is in your eyes. I'm a real good 12-stepper. I like to go get him. I like to go to some dirty, filthy place and find some dirty, filthy man. What I do is, whenever I get me a brand new one, the first thing I always do is I get right down and look in his eyes. Newcomer eyes, huh? You tell me something more empty than that. I want to tell you, that's what my eyes looked like when I was 4 years old. Lack of power was my dilemma. And I get the guy cleaned up and take him to a meeting. Go to a coffee shop after the meeting lots of times. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. I'll sit across a coffee table and the power's in his eyes. And I got to watch that happen. And I sponsor guys sober 20 years and 19 and 17 and 10 and 5 and 3. And I got to watch the light come on in their eyes. And I got to watch them come in here and clean their lives up, get real estate licenses, you know, and get their families back and become citizens again and go out and carry the message to other people. That's a miracle. People like us don't live like we live. It's impossible for somebody to me to live like as I live. It's impossible for Ed to live like Ed lives, or Bob as Bob lives. That power has been in my life no matter what. The other thing I know for sure about God is this. I had you laughing a little while ago. That's when God talks to me, when we're laughing. I got here. Were you laughing I wasn't laughing. Were you laughing when you got here? The only way I could laugh for, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years before I got here, the only way I could laugh was like, I'm so slick, you know? That's if you fell down and got hurt, you know? My sponsor had me to a meeting up in L.A. here somewhere, like 3 days sober. And this clown was up at the podium. I went, ha ha! What was that? What was that? Scared the hell out of me. It felt like stitches staring in my stomach. And I've been laughing ever since. Oh, I love conventions, don't you? Where you sit right in the middle of the room, where there's maybe a couple thousand of us, some goofs up at the podium, and we're just roaring together, huh? From the belly. Al-Anons and AAs. Because the only thing more painful for a human being to endure, the only thing worse than alcoholism, the only thing worse than being a person like me is being married to somebody like me. Because you remember it all. You know, like it when Al-Anons and AAs were all together and we're just roaring with laughter. I love to take new little Al-Anons, brand new ones. My wife gets them. And we take them to AA speaker meetings like this, you know. You know, and the guy's up the podium and he says, I fell on the Christmas tree and smashed all the presents. And then we all go, and this little Al-Anon's going, nothing funny about that.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think.
You remember that expression? Don't you think you had a few too many? They say, you had a few too few. That's your goddamn problem, man. I wish I had time to tell you about the way they drink. Oh. You know, who's they talking about? Did you ever drink with a social drinker and, you know, take the cork off? What was it you were talking? They go. Well, you threw that away. Yeah. They go find it. You know, little Peggy from Nebraska, she's one of my dear friends. I was with her somewhere a couple years ago, and she said, alcoholism is the only prison where the locks are on the inside. And boy, I about slid off my chair when she said that, because that's the story of my life. You know, I locked myself in there long before I remember. I don't know why, I don't care why. It's not a psychological program to me. It's a spiritual way of life. I suppose I locked myself in there to protect myself from you. But by the time I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, the walls were so thick and the locks were so heavy. And my little sponsor told me that we have 12 keys to let ourselves out of that prison. He says, and for a brilliant intellectual like you, we numbered them. 1, 2. Cruelest man I've ever known, thank God, thank God. He died 3 years ago. I miss him every day of my life. I have a very good sponsor now, but I miss that mean little man, that little electrician. But where I walk out in the hills near my home, there's a crow, big black crow flies, and he gets up ahead of me, gets on this wire, and when I get there, he goes, wah, 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 wah. I say, okay, Bill, okay, I got it. I swear to God it's him, because he follows me every day. And he knew what my problem was. That little sponsor knew what my problem was. See, all my life I thought my problem was I wasn't loved enough. Perhaps you'll identify with that. Never was loved enough. A lot of people tried, but it never was enough. What I didn't know about me was there isn't enough. You know, you can't summon enough love for me. That's the kind of person I am. I'm the black hole of lovedom. Just goes in there and you never see it again. I mean, my wife tried, my children tried, my students tried, my drunken parents tried. But see, the little sponsor, he knew better. Now, he didn't tell me this. He knew what my problem was. My problem was I never loved enough. My problem has always been that I never loved at all. My problem is I didn't know how to start to learn how to begin to love. So you know what he did? He made me do loving things against my better judgment. He filled my life with loving actions, whether I meant it or not. He made me stand at the door. That's the part I always hated the most because I'm a snob. Hi, I'm Cliff. What's your name? Like I really... You know, and you know, when I was new, he sponsored everybody, and if you were a newcomer in Army and you raised your head, you'd have been torn limb from limb tonight, you know, because we were so scared of him. Some guy, I knew, I got him, give him mine, no, he's mine, you know. Gee, poor guy. Let me out of here, you know. I'm going to take you home, no, he's mine. And we used to have wall talkers when I was new, guys that sat in the back of the room, talked to the wall. We don't get them much anymore, do we? They're out in the street now. All in Los Angeles, too. After the meeting was over, he would say, go talk to the wall talker. Oh, God, I hated that. How are you tonight? Oh, good. But mostly, this one's better. Okay, I'll go with this one. Got to talk shorthand here. There was a guy named Al who had just gotten sober again. I was a 5-year loser. He was a 10-year loser and a jerk. A real butt. You know what I mean when you say the word butt? That was Al. Still is. I would have nervous breakdowns because, you know, my kids didn't stop taking drugs just because I got sober. And my wife didn't become a nice lady. She didn't go to Al-Anon until the next day, St. Patrick's Day. But anyway, you know, it was a zoo there, and I'd run over to my sponsor's house and we lived a block away, and I'd have nervous breakdowns. I'd cry, I'd sob, say, you know what they're doing over there now? And he would listen. You know how they listen? And I'd get all through, you know, I'd be just running down. He'd say, why don't you go get Al and take him to the meeting? What's that got to do with the nervous breakdown? What the hell? So I'd go get Al, you know, listen to his BS all the way to the meeting. Al had no driver's license. Blah, 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 blah. We'd set the meeting up, make the coffee, have the meeting, everybody go home. Al and I'd set the meeting down, wash the coffee pots. We had real cups in those days, you know, had to do the cups. Al was so shaky, he had to wash. He just put his hands in the water. Shit, I could dry, you know. You got to feel better than somebody when you're new, you know. And I'd load him in the car and drive old Al, blah, 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 blah. And I would let him off. And I'd start driving home, and I'd have this feeling that would come over me. Better than the 8 minutes. You know what I felt like? I felt like I was enough. And I don't know what you were like, but when I was born, I wasn't enough. And for, you know, like for a few minutes on the way home, I would be enough. And I got kind of addicted to that feeling. And Al got drunk once more, and I went to help him. And he was really broken down and was crying, and I was trying to talk to him and, you know, tell him that it was going to be all right. And all of a sudden, out of my mouth, I said, I love you, Al. And I knew that it was true. I knew down in the marrow of my bones I wanted that man to be sober so bad. And he did. He got sober. And more sober. And he and I became this primo 12-step team. We 12-stepped the goddamn world. We went and got them all, baby. We used to do the good guy, bad guy thing. Did you ever do that? You know, one guy said, "You're going to quit your sniveling and whining, shut your goddamn mouth, and go to the meeting." The other guy said, "Never mind him. Come here." And I wanted to say here before my time's up, I believe in cruelty to newcomers. I've always believed in that. No, really, I love it. That's what they're here for. I like these cocaine new ones, don't you? They look like the little birds at the beach. Don't you love them? Oh, yeah. I wait till they get a cup of coffee, you know, and start for their chair, and I say, "How you doing tonight?" Algo gets their coffee, you know, and he brings the cup and he fills it, just. And the guy's got to make a decision now. He's not laughing. Oh, the one I liked the best was the one we had. It was a little while back at Cocaine Head, and so I sat next to him as the meeting started, and I leaned over just as they're starting to read chapter 5, and I said, "Was that guy looking in the window looking at you?" It's a strange way to show love, but it's the way I do it. You know, after a little while, I learned to love newcomers. I learned to love dirty newcomers. And one night Clancy was talking and he said, "Treat your kids like newcomers." That was the greatest concept I've ever heard in my life. And I started to treat my kids like newcomers. And I want you to know before I sit down here that my family is all right. We were 7 of the most insane human beings the world has ever known. And all 7 of us lead good, relatively happy, useful, worthwhile lives. Our youngest son has 5 years of sobriety on the program. Our middle daughter has almost 6. Our oldest daughter has almost 15 years in Al-Anon. Our youngest daughter doesn't need anything, you know. She grew up straight in a crooked family. And the salesman still drinking. But he's a very, very successful man, lives on the island of Maui, in the Hawaiian Islands, and has the world by the tail. Couldn't possibly be an alcoholic. But I want to tell you, I went over there and we were surfing together last June, and then he took me to the airport, and he was 40 now, but he was almost 40 then, and he put my suitcases down and put his arms around me in the middle of that airport and held me to him and said, "I love you, Dad." And that's the kid that didn't want me around. And I love him. He doesn't have to get sober for me. He doesn't have to do anything for me. We love each other for fun and for free. And when we're all together, Frank's been in my house whenever my family's around. It's wall-to-wall happy people. You can't get here from there. But AA and Al-Anon brought us here. These 2 spiritual ways of life. I'm going to live a happy, useful life today because I love you. Look around this room. If it wasn't for everybody in this room, we would be dead.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious. Do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. to install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.